Evening of talks within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Mushtaq Ali Al-Ansari, and with my co-host, Kyle. Say hello, Kyle.
Hello, Kyle. Just kidding.
Yeah. No, don't kid. That was a softball I tossed you there. And here we are on this beautiful Sunday evening. Actually, the evening is not all that beautiful because we have a sky full of smoke and entire towns burning down here in California. It's kind of grim, actually.
It is.
So,
as my friend described it, it smells like barbecue and climate change.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little unfortunate. So, the subject of tonight is exercise. Is it evil? Now, this is it's a trick question. Obviously, when have I ever asked a question that wasn't a trick question? You can be pretty sure that, "Hey, how you doing?" is a trick question. So, exercise, as we understand it, is a fairly recent phenomenon. I was checking today, and I do not find reference to things like people going out to exercise until the Industrial Revolution. And that got me thinking. Now, we have our friend Frederick the Dane. Something that came to mind that happened when Frederick and Dave and the entire gang were out here at the beginning of last month. I was doing a seminar for them, and it was after a break, I think. And all of a sudden, Frederick walks up. We're doing this in a martial arts school and gym, and he walks up to this place where there's a couple of straps hanging, and he just grabs them and pulls himself up and is hanging horizontal from his arms, just holding himself out there. Now, was he exercising? What do you think? Do you remember that, Dave?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Was he exercising?
It looked deceptively like it. It also looked like he was having fun, but yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest that he was playing.
That's what I felt too.
Yeah, and that was my impression. It's not like he was working out.
No.
He was having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurs to me that when I was young, back in the mid 20th century, as kids, we never exercised. We were too busy running around, climbing trees, jumping over rocks, swimming in ponds, chasing each other, stalking rabbits, sneaking up on deer, all of these things to actually go and exercise. And yet it didn't seem to hurt us. And I suspect that the modern consciousness is what happens when you take away the natural being in the world, if that makes sense.
Modern what?
The modern concept of having to exercise is what happens when you take away the natural being in the world. Because there wasn't any. There was training. I mean, if you were learning a particular skill set, there was training for that, but there wasn't this idea of working out. There was even decompensation from training, which is how you get yoga. And this thought that I had, I was thinking about when play went away and exercise became the thing. And it was somewhere around junior high school. Because you had, well, it was even earlier than that. Because in school, exercise was punishment. You know, now you don't even have that because kids don't have gym classes and things like that. But when I was a kid, if you as a group did something that was deemed inappropriate by the teachers, they made you exercise. You would have to go out and run a lap or do push-ups or any of these sorts of things. And this carried on all through junior high school. It got really bad in junior high school because then you had dedicated gym classes with dedicated gym coaches whose, it seemed to me at the time, and it doesn't seem very different now, that the only purpose in the life of a gym coach was to torment students. Because that's what it was like. Play became work and oftentimes punishment. And I can remember when things like that became no fun anymore. And I suspect that we have done ourselves a vast disservice by allowing that to be the way that it was. And God knows what it's like now, because I think most high schools in the US, at least, don't have physical education classes anymore. They have sports, and you can go out for a sport, but general PE seems to have fallen by the wayside. So what do you think? For those of you who come from different places and have different experiences, is that what it was like as you were growing up? Was there a place where exercise became punishment?
I will say that I think there is a component to that. Whereas in Australia, we are a reasonably small population compared to some countries, but we have a very high amount of sport participation, and sport is kind of part of the national identity in many ways. We have 4 codes of football in the country, for instance. So when I went to PE in the 90s, it was very little actual kind of games. Like, they did a little bit of the games, a little bit of the push-ups and the circuits, but a lot of it kind of had a sportive component. Like, the games were preference towards preparing you for sport. In primary school, we didn't even have PE. You just like played at lunchtime, and we used to. It was a little bit less controlled then, so we used to actually have fun, like climb trees and get told not to, wrestle and get told not to, play kind of throwing stuff at each other and get told not to. But then these days, that's all been kind of outlawed. So I don't know if they teach PE. Oh, yes, they do actually. My daughter has 1 class per week or something like that, but it's kind of, in primary school, you learn kind of basic skipping, kind of general conditioning for sports. And then in high school, a little bit more of that, but it's mainly has a sportive bias. So I'm not sure if, and I have read arguments about some of the exercise and working out of this era being quite tied to the advent of professional sports arising, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, that was the other thing. As I got older, there was a primacy on sports. Nancy here says, much less extreme for me, but may have been different for girls in the 60s. Not as punishment, but not as play either. Yeah, the girls seemed to have a whole different reality when it came to physical education that boys were not privy to, because the genders were completely separated for me as a kid. Boys and girls did not play together. And yeah, the sports thing is interesting because if you were not excelling in a particular sport where I grew up, the gym coach wanted nothing to do with you. It was very much like Revenge of the Nerds. If you saw that movie where they, if you were on the football team, you were the cat's pajamas, but if you weren't, you were scum. You were not worth the attention of the PE teachers and or coaches.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit like that when I was in high school in the 2000s, in that if you can't keep up, you know, they have concern. They're not really trying to make it so you feel like a full participant. They're just wanting you to meet these criteria. And I was not someone who was interested or able to be an athlete. So I felt very much like gym class was something that you end up kind of just falling by the wayside and stuff like that.
I had that problem in that the sports that were popular were not ones that I was interested in. There was no fencing at my junior high school. I was crushed. The closest thing we had to a fun sport for me was wrestling, and that was, you know, for like 6 weeks out of the year. So why would I bring this up on this supposedly spiritual talk, this self-development talk? Why would this be of interest to anybody? This is not a rhetorical question. Do feel free to answer.
Because it's important to keep our bodies moving, to enjoy being in our bodies.
Yes, I would go so far as to say that your body is, in fact, the only vehicle you have for self-development. It's your tool. And if we are trained in childhood to dislike our bodies and pull ourselves away from them, it's going to make it very, very hard to do the necessary work, because so much of the necessary work involves moving your body.
Yeah, as Nancy has said in the chat, because exercise culture is about ignoring what you feel, and your path is about increased awareness.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, exercise in elementary school, junior high, and high school, or however one arranges it, does not teach you to increase your awareness of your body. It does not teach you how to move. It definitely teaches you to ignore it, suck it up, walk out the pain, you know, shake it off, get back in there, fight, 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 all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I think this as a culture has had a very negative effect on us and on the idea of how to develop yourself. So Laura, you teach a lot of young people. Have you found it hard to get them in their bodies at first?
Well, not really, because our schools still have the gym programs. Even junior high and high school still have it. When I was in high school, I wanted to do the weightlifting, but wasn't allowed to because I was a girl. But now the girls have weightlifting if they want to do it, just as the boys. When I was in high school, instead of doing girls' gym, I did athletic gym. I was the only girl in it for most of the year until someone came in, because I didn't want to do the girls' class, because I wanted to keep going and have fun.
Yeah, the having fun thing is, I think, the key. So I remember as a child being in my body was a pleasurable experience. Running around in the desert was fun. Climbing trees was a good time. All of the physical things that we did, even in school, you know, playing on the swings and the jungle gym and all of that was play. It was fun. And seeing what you could do, discovering your limits was not something that you were being forced to do. You were just doing it. And
yeah, flipping off the monkey bars.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm wondering if we are doing ourselves a great disservice by taking that away and turning what should be play and fun into work.
I did have one time, like when I was teaching in my backyard, we still have our swing set, which is a metal threaded, heavy piped swing set that we've had since we were children. And one of the boys had never been able to climb up. And he was like 13 or 14 and couldn't pull himself up on there. He finally got it. And he was proud of himself, where I was flipping still off of it. And he goes, "How do you do that?" But then he finally got it. Now he knows.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yes, it's play. It's not work.
And he was homeschooled as a child. So, not sure what they did, but...
yeah, they didn't do PE.
No.
So, I'm wondering... if you are looking for self-awareness, you have to look inside your own body, because that's where you're going to find it. You're not going to find it outside of that. What was it, you, Dave, who asked me about Sufi poems about being in the body?
Yeah, I was just interested because the perspective that you've been saying in the talks in little different snippets is very similar to what I've done in my own work over the years. And so I was wondering if it was written down in any books specifically, but you indicated it was in lots of little bits throughout the texts and the tradition.
Yeah, little snippets here and there. Yeah, it would be nice if there were a manual. Actually, there may be one, because there was just a GoFundMe put on to raise money to translate this Mamluk training manual from the 14th or the 15th century. Mamluks were the soldiers in Egypt that came from Central Asia. They were basically brought in as slave soldiers and ended up taking over the country. And there is a manuscript on their training that contains all the exercises and everything. And it is finally being translated from Arabic into English. So we might find something a little bit more to the point in that. And the coaches for the Mamluks were all Sufis, so it has that going for it.
There's got to be some gems in there.
Yes, I am seriously hoping that this is going to turn out to be a great thing. Not to mention it has an entire sword manual in it, so everything comes back to swords.
So, actually, it's interesting how the talk has started for me, because I started very much being, as a kid, we played and I had the same experience. It was just extremely fun, and I spent many hours per day on monkey bars and in trees or throwing something or running about. All the games we played, they might involve a ball, but they weren't particularly sportive. It was just playing around. And then in high school, I did sports for a while because that's what you kind of got corralled into. And then at university, I'd always liked martial arts, and I'd been, as many people were affected by reading Bruce Lee's Tao of Jeet Kune Do when I was somewhat like 12 or something like that. So I decided to take it up at uni, and then it was via training that type of stuff for 7 years that I saw a change in myself beyond just the physical. I got in I just wanted the kind of the physicality of it. It was something I'd always wanted to train, but I realized that lots of other aspects to do more with self-awareness changed. And then that sent me down a rabbit hole of looking into the use of physical methods for that. And I have found personally that there are a number of very, very cool things that you can get from the physical training that prepare you quite well for doing stuff later on too.
Yeah, so here's one thing. The kind of development that we do is rigorous. It demands a lot of you, and it demands of you physically as well as mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And if you cannot make yourself physically strong enough to handle the stresses of waking up, it's much, much harder. So to be well embodied and to be able to move in a healthy fashion, that doesn't mean that you have to have the abilities of a professional athlete or anything like that. It just means that you have to have energy in your body, and the only way to get that is by using your body. And the more you can free up energy in your body by breaking down fascial adhesions and patterns of chronic tension and that sort of thing, the easier the work is. And if we have a negative connotation on human movement that says exercise is hard, or you know, I hate exercise because my coach was mean to me in high school or whatever. If you were the kid who was laughed at because you were not good at playing baseball, you're going to have a negative charge on using your body. And so one of the points of tonight's talk is to talk about how you reframe that. How can you change or help somebody who has a negative charge on being embodied to reframe that so that being a body is more pleasurable. I mean, I look at most people who are my age and they're miserable. They are miserable in their bodies.
Well, I've been doing like water aerobics about nine times a week, and every time we get new people, I tell them don't follow what I do, because I help them out whenever someone else is teaching. And one thing they like to do is they'll tell you to squat. Well, I squat and I squat all the way and go under. Every single person that I tell not to follows me. The last lady that did it, she was older than myself, and she had a riot with it because a lot of the older women don't like to get their hair wet. Her makeup was running. She told the instructor she had a blast, that I opened her up to having a good time.
Aww.
And
yeah,
that was just kind of fun. That was just a couple days ago.
That's interesting. Yeah, you would be one of the people who don't have as much of a problem with this, I think, because you're physical all the time. You're teaching martial arts, you're doing martial arts, you're going and learning martial arts, and you're doing your swimming thing. So you're pretty well embodied.
And I just have fun with it. So.
Yeah. Now, when you get new students in who are not well embodied, that becomes the interesting thing. How do you help them make this fun? Because you know that a martial arts school can be a traumatizing experience if the teacher isn't good. If you get a teacher who's like, you know, the Cobra Kai guy.
Yeah, I just have fun with them and just, you know, tell them that we're not going to get it right away either. And we just laugh and have fun and we just play pretty much. If they get it right away, they get it. If not, I let them do, you know, like with one little girl. She was into gymnastics. She was cartwheeling. And we were doing a self-defense technique with a knife. So she did a cartwheel and went and stabbed at one of the other kids. And the other kid had to disarm her. So just adding something else to the element kind of made it interesting.
Yeah.
And she had fun that way. Get your gymnastics in with some martial arts.
There you go.
Why not? Yeah.
So, Dave, in your work is profoundly physical. How often do you run across people who hate being in their bodies?
Like really, really overtly, not too often, but it does happen. But the people who either aren't aware that they don't like it in some way, or there's some type of separation between their experience of their body, that's pretty much the norm. But I think one of the things in the positive is that people are like, some of the research in terms of exercise and its benefits for health is much better than it used to be. People, at least in Australia, a lot of people who are older are wanting to explore new things, but their body limits them. So quite often you get people coming in via the injury route. But then if you can explain that and help them with that, then they get the pain removed. But they also, if you frame it correctly and if you dialogue correctly, you can make them interested again about being in the body, because it's really interesting. If you've done any physical work of any decent degree and the body starts to wake up again, it's a fascinating thing, and it does kind of make you more susceptible to play like you were when you were a kid. It's a wonderful thing to do to people, and it doesn't really have an age limit. I've had lots of students over 70 who've been able to get quite amazing results for them. Like, they don't need to go and do something that would be extreme, but they just want to be able to walk around wherever they're going, or they want to go hiking on a holiday or something like that, and it's not that difficult to give those people that.
Yeah. So I suspect that in today's world, one of the first tasks of anybody who is teaching this kind of stuff is to get people back in touch with their physicality. I think that we may have to come to the conclusion that this is a first necessary step, and that it will be very difficult for doing the more spiritual things without that. Now, my reason for that is that, like I said, your body is the only instrument that you have for interacting with the rest of the universe. You know, that's it. You know, what's in between the top of your head and the bottom of your feet is your tool. And if you are not using your tool well, you don't get to interact with all of that heavenly glory. So that was my one big thought for today, was the idea that we as teachers, we as people who are helping other people, need to be very conscious of the idea that, first of all, we must all be embodied. You know, because you can't take anybody to any place that you haven't yourself been. And then, as one of the primary steps of the work, getting people reconnected with their physicality and using their physicality as the main tool for their own self-development. Now, how would you use your own physicality as the main tool for your self-development?
Important questions.
It is an important question. It's not even a trick question for once. But it is a question.
Well, I would say that what you just mentioned before about having the physical basis before going on to other types of work, I would say I agree completely with that, and I've seen quite good evidence training people in that regards. I've also found that through some of my work, when you start to get enough inhibition removed from people and enough sensation through different aspects of the physical body, you can interact with awareness in kind of a triangulation way. So you can start to use what you feel inside with your body with what's happening in the outside world, and the awareness witnessing all of that to start to try to unplug certain habits. And it makes things a little bit clearer, or a fair bit clearer, when you can actually feel different aspects of the body. So up through the viscera, through the breathing apparatus, through the muscles, and then triangulating in on that with what's happening inside the head, what's happening outside of the body in terms of in the immediate environment. And then you can start to unplug some of the patterns that are habitual, or at least see them happening.
And that's exactly right. That's dead on. Now, the ego is in the body. The ego is the pattern, the persistent interference pattern that exists within the neurology and the muscles and the viscera and every part of you. The way it goes together is your ego. And that's something that does not get stressed enough. Your ego is not just between your ears. It is contained within your entire body. It is made up of the body. It's made up of chronic neural pathways, the neural pathways that get used over and over again, and to the exclusion of other pathways. And if you change the body, you change the ego. If you release, if you give greater flexibility to your physicality, if you give greater sensation to your physicality, if you break outside of chronic habitual movement patterns, then you literally change your ego. And most importantly, you change it for the better, because the more choice you have, the better off you are. And if you only have one choice of how to rotate your shoulder, then you're pretty limited. So say you can only move your shoulder up and down, and there's no forward and back movement to speak of. You have sensory motor amnesia in your scapula, and you can no longer effectively pull your shoulder backward. Now, if you teach somebody if you retrain them to re-access that part of themselves, to where all of a sudden they don't have just up and down, but they now have back and forth. And then they have in and out. And then they have circles along all of those planes. All of a sudden they have more choice and more freedom. Not just freedom of movement, but freedom of expression in every part of themselves. And that comes across as a radical idea, you know, and people are going to go, oh, can you prove that? And the answer is yes, I can. Give me your body for a year. And I guarantee you, by the time that I am done with it, your ego will not be the same. And you will see that.
I mean, I can kind of speak to that myself.
Yes, please do.
As someone, yeah, as someone with a genetic condition that impacts one or several types of collagen in my body, there are some things that, at least practically speaking, I can't do a lot to change. However, I have found that it's extremely important for me to be in my body in order to not only contextualize my pain, but respond to it in ways that frankly feel good, that remind me that there are things that my body can and will do if I give it the attention that it needs. And that's changed so many other things about my life and about the way that I view the world.
Yeah. And that is a story that you will hear over and over again. When somebody comes into a martial arts class and they then spend, say, the next 5 years working, learning the martial art, mastering it, learning to move in completely different ways, the person who comes out of that class at the end of those 5 years is not the person who went in. Their ego is not the same ego. They have transformed themselves at a very real level, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to be. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you uncover things that you didn't realize were possible.
Yes.
Because you were sometimes numb to them, sometimes just uninformed. And it's great to have support through the process of things that the body can do. Yeah.
So I think it was Sri Chinmoy who said, when you work on somebody, you work from the bottom up or from the heart out, but never from the head down. Meaning that trying to think your way through this stuff just entrenches the patterns more deeply. You can get these effects by working at a certain, at a certain emotional level, but most effectively, you get them by repatterning your physicality, by creating more choice and more freedom on the physical level, which then overlaps into every part of your existence. And you don't have to be a first-class athlete. That's the cool thing. You don't have to be a first-class athlete. Kyle will probably never be a world-class athlete.
Probably not.
Probably not. But that does not mean that you don't have to, that you are not allowed to be in your body.
Exactly.
You might find gentler ways to do it, ways that don't hurt, but they are there.
Yep. That was an extremely important realization.
Yes. And so the idea that changing the body changes the ego needs to be reintroduced into our world. Because as everybody now knows who has paid any attention to what's going on in physical culture and psychology, we now have demonstrable proof, for instance, that moving your body every day, breaking a sweat, lubricating the joints is more effective as an antidepressant than any antidepressant on the market. Think about that. All of those pills that cost hundreds of dollars a bottle don't work as well as a good brisk walk.
Or even a hot bath, you know.
Yeah.
One that gets your blood flowing and you start perspiring and all.
Yeah. Or a hot tub. Or a hot tub with friends. No, sorry. So this is the sort of thing that I would really want to reintroduce to the curriculum of the school, because without it, it is very difficult to change. Without it, you cannot effectively build up the energy that you need for work quite so easily. It's not impossible, but it is difficult. So Nancy, so farewell to Dave. Good luck getting your daughter. Any thoughts on this from you, Nancy?
It's hard for me to get myself to exercises. A lot of my situation. I'm not in horrible condition, but it's not good either.
Yeah. So do you like to play?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's not obvious what I would be doing.
Uh-huh.
Possibly I could try some dancing, you know, just for fun at home.
Yeah. You could go for a walk with a friend and have a wonderful conversation.
I don't have a lot of local people. Excuse me?
I said play on a swing.
There might be a local park that's got them, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes if there's nothing else to do, I will take a walk and put my MP3 player in my ears and listen to a good book while walking. I often find that both relaxing and invigorating.
I definitely dance when I'm alone sometimes for fun.
Aha.
You know.
I only dance with other people and there has to be swords involved.
Oh my God.
I have to work in the word sword every 15 minutes.
Clearly.
Because more people need to be fighting with swords. What can I say?
You need more sword friends, right? Never enough.
Yeah, we are a small group. But it's, by the way, Laura, how's your archery coming?
Pretty good.
Ooh, archery.
Yeah. Yeah, you were quite involved for a while, but I haven't seen anything from you lately.
Oh, I know. It's just been kind of crazy around here.
Yeah.
Taking care of the folks and stuff, so.
Yeah, that's a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
So there we have what I wanted to talk about today, just to introduce that idea that the physical aspect of the work is real, it's important, it's fundamental, and it's transformative. And one of the things that needs to be transformed is the idea of moving your body as work and or punishment to moving your body as play and happiness, joyousness.
Yeah, I just want to suggest another thing that, I mean, personally, because my spine requires a lot of attention, I find that I do a lot of impromptu stretching, rolling my shoulders, things like that, just because they feel good. No one's making me do them. It's just, I find relief in doing those things, and that's why I do them. And they feel like play. It feels enjoyable. So that's one way that I always make sure I get in some movement throughout the day.
Excellent. And if anybody who is listening to this, either in the moment or in recording, needs some help and or suggestions or coaching or anything for how to start doing this, that's what the forum is for. Mm-hmm. Get on the forum, ask questions. I will be there to answer. Kyle will be there to answer. And we have a bunch of people on the forum who really understand how to get you back in your body. And we will all be providing answers, or at least better
learning
questions.
From each other. Yeah.
And learning from each other. Yes. Yeah, because
one new thing I attempted this summer was paddle boarding, but doing yoga on the paddle board.
Paddleboard yoga. Who would have thunk it? That sounds like
doing
fun.
Doing a paddleboard yoga, and we were doing it in Lake, like St. Clair River, Lake Huron.
Dang.
So very interesting when you're doing from a hard board to an inflatable, how much harder an inflatable is to stand up on.
I've seen videos of that. Pretty hilarious.
Yeah. All right, so commercial time. Let me remind everybody that, and that you have all heard this who are here with me, so you can check out if you need to, but I'm going to remind anybody who is watching this on replay that you still have the opportunity to get a copy of the Ultimate Enneagram. Hopefully Kyle will be typing in the URL for that, which is ultimateenneagram.com. www.ultimateenneagram.com. And it's if I do say so myself, it's a pretty darn good course, and it's going to be the basis of the next two courses that we are going to do. The next course, which is coming up and will be free to you guys, anybody who's in the forum and wants to participate in it, and it will be on the 3 forces and the 6 processes. And this is both Enneagram material and more than that. And it is how you say, it's one of the fundamental ways that the universe is built. That's what the model is. If you want to know how the universe is built, this is the model of how it's built according to this particular tradition. And once you learn it, you can make the universe a more friendly place. After that, I'm going to do a course on the octave, the ascending and descending octave. So far in the Enneagram course, we only talked about the ascending octave. We have not spoken of the descending octave because that is a much more evolved teaching according to the ancient masters. And so we're going to spend a few weeks on that. So these are the exciting things coming up. The 3 forces class is going to start in about 2 weeks. I will have something up, I think, tomorrow on it. I've been struggling with the writing. I hate writing. It's a burden on my soul. I've to have to write this stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor me. I'm whinging.
Speaking of
There's
writing,
no word.
yeah, you're
I'm
totally
become a
whinging right
whinger.
now.
Yeah, I'm
You're
totally
whinging.
whinging
You're
right
exercising your mind.
Yeah.
now. Yeah, I'm exercising my whinging.
So, speaking of writing, I think as
Yes.
some of you know, I have started writing a blog. It's called Light Goes Rogue, and right now it's lightgoesrogue@wordpress.com, but I'm hoping some point soon to get a more official sounding lightgoesrogue.com web address. But I post at least once weekly, so everyone can look forward to that, and I hope they'll check in on it, support
Yeah.
me.
And her entries are really, really good and extremely accessible, and you'll like them.
Yeah.
And she writes much better than I do.
I do all the editing too, so it should be
Yes. So there is that. I just finished with another of my clients. So there is now, again, one more slot open for anybody who would like to take advantage of my special. You know, one from column A, one from column B. Or that is to say, if you would like some actual real work, one-on-one, you can get four sessions at half price for $200 because my usual fees are $100 an hour or $100 a session because I always run over a little bit. Or you can get 6 sessions for $300. And people seem to actually get something out of it. We work on many, many different things. Whatever it is you need, we'll figure out how to work on it. So that's going on.
He's pretty easy to work with too. So
yeah, so there.
He's a
all
good
right,
cat.
folks. It is now past the 8 o'clock hour. So I want to thank you all for coming yet again and hanging out with me. And sometime soon, I hope to see you on the forum with lots of interesting questions. And we will be back next Sunday. Good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, as good old Tennessee Ernie Ford used to say. Now that's dating myself. All right, take care, and we're going off the air.